Every 2 years, we have what we call the COSPAR Symposium. And that's the biggest event of the year for space research. We have been selected, Cyprus, our organization, has been selected to host it between 3 to 7 November. Think what's going to happen then? The topic of the symposium is sustainability and the benefits of space to our planet, solving all the problems that we have, from climate change to depletion of resources, wars, etc., etc. So space is bringing loads of solutions, and I could go on forever explaining the different solutions, from medical solutions to protecting the environment. The list is very, very long. We even brought the chief scientist of NASA here in Cyprus back in 2019, and he mentored some of our teams, and we saw year after year after year, we got in total 8 global awards on all these different competitions, to the point that NASA said, what the heck are you doing in that country? And you have so many wins per capita. Doesn't make any sense. I think you struck a sensitive note within me. We're doing what we're doing as an organization because we believe in our country, because we believe that what we do brings competence, stimulates our young people, but at the same time, we're not the International Space Innovation Center just for our country, but for the world. So the next steps we're going to take are looking to transform technologies for the benefit of humanity, for the benefit of Cyprus, for the benefit of Europe, for the benefit of the whole planet.
Welcome to the Financial Frontiers podcast. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that bell icon to get notified when we upload new content. Follow us on Spotify and give us a 5-star rating. It will help the channel, which I hope you love so much. All right, here we are, another Financial Frontiers podcast with a unique guest today. We're going to be talking about space exploration. Yeah, space frontiers, financial frontiers, kind of links up. My guest today, director, or chairman rather.
President of the Space Organization of Cyprus.
President of the Space Organization of Cyprus, George Danos. We're going to talk about what Cyprus is doing, how we're involved in the exploration of space and getting humanity out into the stars. And for me, interesting in my questions that I'm going to ask is, how does this link up to entrepreneurship, and how can someone make money? You know, there's going to be a lot of questions here.
We're definitely not asking the aliens to invest in us.
What kind of money they would use?
Yeah, that's the question.
Some new kind of crypto or something else. Who knows? George, please introduce yourself, and thank you very much for attending.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. As I said, I'm the president of the Cyprus Space Exploration Organisation, which happens to be today in the wonderful position to say that recently the International Space Research Organisation, that's the biggest organization on the planet, selected Cyprus and our organization to be their very first International Space Innovation Center. And you might ask me, Cyprus, and why? There are multiple reasons, and those have got little to do with our position in the crossroads between 3 continents that we all say. It's got to do more with all the work that was done the last 2016. It's almost 9 years now since we joined the Federation.
2016 was when the department, is it a department, government department?
No, we're a non-governmental organization. We do this because we believe that what we do is for the right of our country and for the right of humanity, for the good of our country and the good of humanity.
So a private institution?
It's a private institution. It's a private research institution, non-governmental, not for profit. And the sole reason we exist is to provide opportunities to our young people. Let me give you an example of what that means to me and why I'm doing that. I lived 15 years of my life, my adult life, in London. And I worked for Richard Branson. I was a founder of one of his companies back in 1999. And it's a long story. I asked him for 5 million. He gave me the millions that I asked him. And then I brought back to him approximately $500 million exit within 3 years.
Richard Branson?
Richard Branson, yes. The company, you would know it today, it's called Virgin Media. So the specific element that I created and he sold was called Virgin BizNet. It's the business section for the internet, basically putting companies onto the brand new internet, explaining to the businesses back then, 1999, why it's important that you have e-commerce. E-commerce, what they would be asking. So you had to explain to them, and we put thousands of British businesses onto the internet way back when. But then when I came back home in 2005, what's the expression? 5 cents, 2 cents that I will offer for my country. And because I was always involved in space from university onwards, actually from 5 years onwards to be more precise, space was the thing that I wanted to contribute back to my country after coming back from 15 years abroad. So the organization was created. And for me, having just come back from the UK, it's like, give me something that drives me, give me something that challenges me, give me something exciting in my country, something to want to stay here and do something that's worth it. Mm-hmm. So that something for me was space. But then that something was for all these brilliant Cypriots who have gone abroad and worked for big corporations. There are many Cypriots who work in NASA. So give them the opportunity to do that special, amazing job here in Cyprus.
I love it.
And the question, of course, would be back in 2012, when we first started the organization, how on earth do you think that space is in any way relevant to Cyprus? It's an oxymoron. And yes, in that era of everybody saying these guys lost their mind, we created the organization and we were embraced and we were surprised. And that gave us fuel to keep doing that. So such an embrace was amazing. But then we started to have to see what our goals are. Goal number 1, outreach and education. Help the people understand why it's important to be involved in space. Space doesn't mean I take a telescope and I observe the stars. That's astronomy, which is very similar to space. But space is going there, building spacecraft, building technologies to get out there, discover what's out there, but at the same time, bring solutions back to your planet. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be like ancient, Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals that had to move to the next field. And what's the next field for us now? We've taken over the whole planet. The next field is further out there. But of course, we have to be very careful when we go into the next fertile field that we don't carry with us all the things that humanity we know we don't like about humanity. But anyways, going back to the organization, we had to explain to people the benefits of space. From Earth observation, you're monitoring weather, you're monitoring pollution, you're monitoring the forests, you're monitoring traffic, you're monitoring the aeroplane flights to make sure that one aeroplane doesn't collide with another. All these things are being done from space. Can you imagine today if I told you that you can't use your phone to do navigation, if you can't be on an aeroplane where there is fog because the aeroplane cannot see through the...
where it's going, yeah.
Exactly. Or if I tell you you can't play on the internet or you can't speak to your friends because you don't have satellite communications. You would be back 50, 60 years ago, right? So we are heavily interdependent with space today. So
it's interesting. So, I mean, like the internet, for example, I know if you had to take a look at the map, I don't know if you've seen that picture, when you look at the grid of cables,
yes,
the undersea cables,
yes,
right, that go, it looks just like a big messy bedroom of a nerd, you know,
Yes.
or a geek, let's call it, you know, a networking guy, where he's got all these devices and just cables lying all around the bedroom and that connect all these different devices. That's what Earth looks like, where all these cables just running all over.
Yeah. And imagine the same networks now connecting with all the different destinations that humanity is going out there.
Right. And it's interesting that you say so. I would have never thought. I mean, I think it's getting towards it where, you know, now in the internet, we have an alternate solution to, you know, these cables that are connecting us. We also have space, you know, with Starlink and whatever it is. And obviously GPS, that makes total sense. You don't need the internet, but, you know, geo-tracking and airplanes that need to navigate through clouds and land automatically and don't crash into each other. That's all.
And even for you guys, for fintech,
yes,
stock market,
yes,
you get the exact timing from the GPS for when a transaction happened.
Right.
So even the stock market is dependent.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. Because there's only one time that all of us are you know, linked to. You know, the latency plays a role, as we've spoken quite a lot of times in this podcast with other guests, where, you know, trading in trading, latency is a big deal. So you gave me a few timestamps, but I picked up some gaps. So after Richard Branson, 1999, you helped him make some of his billions, which is freaking awesome. I didn't know that, and that's freaking well done. And I would imagine, you know, what else can you do? And I think space exploration is the next big thing, because if you manage to accomplish such a success in the UK, that makes sense. So, but you said you came in 2005. The organization started in 2016?
12.
12. So what started in 2016?
Oh, no, it was 12. It was 12.
It was 12.
16, we joined the federation.
Oh, you joined the federation.
Yes,
Okay.
The organization joined the International Federation. We call it the International Astronautical Federation.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then a year later, we joined the International Space Organization. So there's loads of things that happen around 16, 17, 18. Those was basically like the first big steps of the organization.
Right.
And then the next huge step of the organization happened last June. But let's kind of like keep things for a bit late.
Let's build a story. No problem.
Yes.
So 2012, your timing there is quite interesting, because that's around then when we had the haircut.
Yes.
So
very important.
Yeah, because, you know, I'm going to take a guess on what your thought process was there. And here it is. What just happened? This place is doomed. Let's go to space.
You're very close to the reality. Yeah. What the heck happened here?
Yes.
It's such a shame.
Yes.
This country can do much more.
100%.
We need hope. And space has always been a safety net during difficult economic times for other big nations. It was, if you think what the economy of the US was during the 50s and 60s, and then when they made the big announcement of
the moon.
Exactly. The moonshot. We're going to go to the moon, and then boom in the economy. It's like the beautiful, amazing results.
How does it link up? Why?
Because you unite people behind a common goal, and the technologies you need to develop are going down to every single strand within the ecosystem of what you need to do. So they had to develop technologies that they didn't have. They had to push the barriers. Yeah. So
that makes sense, you know, because at the start of our conversation, and, you know, I think something that will become very clear to me, and I hope also to my audience, and at the start of our conversation, I was thinking, you know, if you think about space exploration and the whole kind of industry of space, right? How does that resonate with the simple guy, right? The individual, like say myself, where you know, I look at different opportunities. You know, how can I improve, you know, my professional career? What can I do, you know, in terms of finance, let's call it, you know, revenue. And when you think about space, that for me seems just way too distant, something that only governments can get involved in. And then you've got your one lucky strike, like the Elon Musks of the world, who are only, very rare people. And it just, he's the richest person in the world. So it just seems like just too far for me to get involved in. But as we communicating over here, I'm starting to understand, you can get involved, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to understand space and, be like some kind of a rocket scientist to get involved. You could do whatever you could be an accountant and be involved in the industry in terms of, or whatever. So,
I'll give you 3 answers.
Yes.
First answer. There's something we call new space. And this is the same that has happened to aviation, that it was all governmental. Remember, Cyprus Airways, British Airways, Olympic Airways, all these different airlines. And then now all of them are private companies. Tell me, does Cyprus have like a governmental, or does Britain have a governmental airline? No, they don't have it anymore. The same is happening to space. So during this symposium that we're going to have in Cyprus in November, new space is one of the main topics that will be discussed. Basically, commercialization, privatization of space. So I have been in multiple conferences in the past where we had high up people from the global ecosystem. Some of these people will be in Cyprus in November. And they were saying, what do we do with the International Space Station? It's all governmental. Between a few governments, the US, Canada, Europe, Japan, Canada as well. Did I say Canada? So this is a governmental International Space Station. But they want now to bring this station down and replace it with a commercial one. The same happened with when they launched people to space. It was NASA launching people to the International Space Station. Now it's Elon Musk doing that. And Boeing is trying. Of course, Boeing had its mishaps, both with aeroplanes and also with their space launcher. But then the second answer is, take the example of our organization. We're a private organization, and look what happened. The International Space Research Organization has selected us to be the first and only International Space Innovation Center of this prestigious international organization.
Amazing. Tell us some more about what's happening in November, since we've opened up that topic, and then we can go back.
Yeah. Okay. So every 2 years, we have what we call the COSPAR Symposium. And that's the biggest event of the year for space research. There are 2 events. There are multiple events happening throughout the planet. Okay, some small, some big, etc., etc. But the 2 biggest events is the space research one and the space commercial one, which is the Congress, International Astronomical Congress. So for the space research, the biggest one is happening every 2 years, and we have been selected. Cyprus, our organization, has been selected to host it between 3 to 7 November.
I love it.
Now, think what's going to happen then. The topic of the symposium is sustainability and the benefits of space to our planet. For solving all the problems that we have, from climate change to depletion of resources, wars, etc., etc. So space is bringing loads of solutions, and I could go on forever explaining the different solutions, from medical solutions to protecting the environment. The list is very, very long. So at this symposium, you're going to have the biggest of the biggest presenting, from the equivalent of the Director General of NASA to the equivalent from India, China, Japan, France, Germany, Italy. All the big players will be here. All the big presidents of all the big space agencies will be in Cyprus. That alone, when they first selected us, I was like, oh my God, I'm melting on the floor. They just select us.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
can't believe it. I was so
Yeah,
excited.
it's awesome, yeah.
So, and now that we have managed to wake up and pinch ourselves and realize that we're still awake, we're working hard to make this a success. And just yesterday, Monday basically, we got an email from the International Space Research Organization, COSPAR is its name, and says, George, I am delighted to tell you that the number of paper submissions we got is breaking a record of how many people will be coming to Cyprus.
Great.
It's like, oh my God, yes.
Where are you going to do it?
It's in Nicosia at the Royal Hall next to the Ochi roundabout. And we selected the old Nicosia because we want to show them the beauty of the old Nicosia, okay? I mean, it could have been typically in any other city. They always have them in Limassol. They always have them in Larnaca. Come on, guys. It's like, how many big conferences you bring to Nicosia? And I love my capital, so I wanted it to be here. They were insisting, like, have it by the sea because we want to be able to swim. I said, no, it's going to be Nicosia, and that's that. So it's happening in Nicosia. The topic is what I told you, which is a very visionary topic. The biggest people will be arriving here, and we expect between 300 and 500 people from abroad to arrive in Cyprus. So for a week, Nicosia will be buzzing space. And we're going to have astronauts here. We're going to have space scientists.
That's awesome.
It's going to be absolutely crazy.
That's super exciting. And so, okay. So in your organization, where does the revenue come from? So you've been around since 2012. How many people are employed by the organization, and how do you make money?
We have approximately 3 million employees. I'm only kidding. We have about approximately 35 plus employees in the organization. The numbers are growing. The way we were working at the beginning, we were based on volunteers because there wasn't any funding. The funding arrived when we started to apply to European competitive programs. Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020, those programs you may have heard in the past. And of course, the national programs from the Research and Innovation Foundation, who is doing an absolutely awesome job. Both the president and the director of the foundation have done so much for the country. And in fact, later today, I will be with the chief scientist of the country, showing to children our facility and the science that we're doing, because we want to stimulate children in that direction.
With Dimitris
Mr. Skouridis, yes, he's an amazing guy. I'm really fond of him. So he's done so much since he's arrived on this island. So I'm delighted that we are working so closely with him. In fact, he placed his International Innovation Center under his auspices.
Good.
So that's very good on him, that he's supported us and so many other ecosystems on this island, and now he's supporting AI, etc. But going back to what you said, we applied to all these programs. We applied to the Research and Innovation Foundation. We got some grants, a few million grants. And the most important one is that we got the strategic infrastructure. That was the biggest ever competitive grant given from the Research and Innovation Foundation to any organization.
Strategic infrastructure.
Strategic infrastructures. So that was a call that happened in 22. Many companies applied. I don't remember the numbers. Was it 50? Was it 60 companies? And then from this, there was a massive competition. Who is going to win that? So we went in there and we thought, with such competition, it's like tough luck. We're not going to get this. But we didn't work our ass twice as fast, but 10 times as fast, trying to bring the very, very best to our country. So we built, and this is what happened in June, okay? So coming back to that point, we went to our friends. We went to NASA. Do you want to work with us? This is what we're going to do. We went to Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin are the guys who are doing the F-16s, okay? We want to work with you. They're the same people who are doing the Orion capsule, the ones who sent probes to multiple planets, big corporation. So in space, they're amazing, the guys. So then we went to friends that work at Johns Hopkins University, to one of the biggest institutions in Europe, in Finland, who is studying space weather, so Angula. and many others. So we sat with them for months and months and months designing this. So we said, this year, 2025, remember, we were writing the proposal in 22, but this year, 25, is going to be the year that the space weather impact from the sun is going to be at its maximum. And this maximum happens every 11 years.
Where the sun impacts the weather in...
The sun has got what we call the solar weather, which impacts our planet with bombarding us with radiation and particles.
Oh.
And that's why we have Aurora Borealis. And that's why I said back then, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Aurora Borealis in Cyprus. And people said, seriously, I mean, in Cyprus, Aurora Borealis, and we had it twice.
What is that? The Aurora Borealis?
The Polykoselas, the Northern Lights.
Oh, right.
Okay.
And we'll see it in Cyprus.
Twice. This last 24 months.
I've not seen it. Oh, okay, so we will, or
we have seen it.
Okay.
It's been recorded.
Oh.
But in order to see it with the human eyes, you had to be on Rhodos and you had to be sensitive to light. Cameras are sensitive to light, and many people recorded it as in like red ribbons on the sky.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
And it happened twice.
Red or green?
If you're more north, you would see green, blue, and all the different colors, the mauves, okay? But if you're south, you see the peaks, and those peaks are usually red.
Right.
So that's why we saw the red colors.
When you're saying Aurora Borealis, I forgot the term. I know it as the aurora.
Yeah. Aurora Borealis, yes. Yeah,
okay.
Borealis is if it's the Voreo, the north,
Okay.
or Australis if it's the south, yeah. Okay. So we said, because we're going to have the maximum now, it's a perfect opportunity to study the impact of the sun to our planet. But at the same time, because NASA wants to go back to the moon, create bases. And again, when we said that NASA is going to create bases on the moon, people were laughing at us. But here we are again. So can we study the impact of space weather to humans on the moon, in the International Space Station or other space orbit, in aviation, when you're flying from here to Athens, from here to the USA, etc., and on the ground, as we are here in this office, if there's a solar storm out there, would it impact us? What's the impact on our health? So we wanted to study all these things. One of our partners is the A Danos hospital in Nicosia. So we're getting loads and loads of data from the hospitals, epidemiological indexes. We're getting data from space. We're launching our own satellite, which is the third element of what we're going to be doing from Cyprus.
Cyprus is satellite.
Yep. Cyprus is satellite, homemade.
I was going to ask.
Homemade.
So our own resources, our own things.
Our own thing. Okay. Yes, we have Hellasat. Okay. But that's clearly being built in other big advanced countries. This one is going to be built here in Cyprus, our own, amazing. And it's a small satellite like this size, but still our satellite. Doesn't matter. Like the phones, they were bricks and now they're small.
You start from somewhere.
Yeah.
You start from somewhere. Yeah.
So these satellites will carry on them sensors from NASA to measure the impact of space weather. We are working closely with the NASA Institute for Space Health Research, and we already made discoveries. The Cyprus Institute for Neurology and Genetics made a discovery as to what is the impact of space weather or microgravity on the genome of human biology. But they went a step further. Not what's the impact, what's also the right medication to stop those problems for astronauts, but also to humans for other diseases who are related to the diseases that the astronauts might get from space. So therefore, that correlation is now helping people with cardiovascular, cognitive, and other problems. So this major discovery was made a couple of months ago, and it found itself as a big whole page in the London Sunday Times.
Wow.
So these are the results that are happening through this program.
That's so cool.
But of course, NASA came to Cyprus in June. The International Space Research Organization, COSPAR, and others, a room full of people, government officials, ambassadors from all the important big countries, and especially from the United States. were sitting on the front row at the moment when we were signing an agreement with the NASA-funded facility called TRISH, which is Translational Research Institute for Space Health. They're the ones who are studying the health of astronauts. So we signed the agreement with them in June. And at the same time, COSPAR, the international organization, says, I declare you today as our very first International Space Innovation Center. And now, in November, we're hosting their conference. And proudly, we're saying that, A, we will be running the very first innovation competition of COSPAR from Cyprus, and we will keep doing that every year. This year, the challenge is how do we mitigate and how do we detect space debris? You know about space debris, all these.
Meteors and...
So, but we're going a step further. We are going to be stimulating innovation to young people, young startups, in another very big way. Certain agreements will be signed in November. I can't say much more about those agreements. You know about them because I told you a moment ago, but I can't say this on air. But there will be major announcements to be made in November.
That's awesome. Some exciting times over here. And it's really great that Cyprus has actually been, participating at least, with these really large organizations. And what seems to be a very real industry in terms of, making money, having some professional career within. Because there's another perspective that's actually, that's being formulated in my mind, at least now in this conversation that I'm having, is that when you think of space, you don't have to go and sell a sandwich to an alien, because that's not the only way to make money.
Why not? Lunza halloumi sandwich to the aliens. Actually, we are promoting halloumi heavily. And when they said, well, okay, so what kind of dishes are we going to have at the gala? I said, halloumi? Yes, we're definitely coming to Cyprus. That's a space scientist. Sorry for interrupting.
No problem. But then it moves into, these things. And what we're getting involved in, it seems, is now the weather prediction. There's, I'm trying to think now, and there's very real other opportunities, like Starlink, for example, right? That is, I can see that Starlink is really going to reshape a lot of things. Like it's going to put countries, like remote third world countries that don't have access to the internet at all, like, Africa, for example, or in India, these rural areas where, the cost of infrastructure, putting copper and getting, all these vast lands where there are people connected to the internet and they're not able to, but they all have cheap mobile devices, or a lot of them have cheap mobile devices. So making the internet available from the sky just makes sense. And why does it have to be only Starlink that does that? It could be a startup in Cyprus.
Okay. You're poking me here. Okay, so there are lots of interesting things that are happening here in Cyprus. And let me take a step back and then a step forward. Firstly, we've been stimulating, a step further back. Remember I said that we started from education and outreach. Then we went into innovation and startups. Then we went into research and the industry. And then we went to international relations. So we have 4 distinct pillars. In the innovation pillar, we did a lot with competitions. The last pillar, which is international relations, you can tell from what happened with NASA and everybody else, that's the success right there. But therefore, in innovation, we run all the competitions of NASA, the European Space Agency, the French Space Agency, the European Commission. So we were running multiple competitions every year, and we were supporting, mentoring these teams. And especially where we saw a talent, we supported them as much as we could. We even brought the chief scientist of NASA here in Cyprus back in 2019, and he mentored some of our teams. And we saw year after year after year, we got in total 8 global awards on all these different competitions, to the point that NASA said, what the heck are you doing in that country? And you have so many wins per capita. Doesn't make any sense. I mean,
that's awesome.
What's the secret? And we said, no secret. We love our country. We love our people. We support our people. We have very bright people. But if you don't support them, you're not going to see anything. If you do support them, you'll see results. And here are the results. Yeah. So the next step, though, the startups, is where you want to take the innovation and support them with funding to become a startup company so that the economy of the country is thriving. And that's why we created what we call the Cyprus Space Cluster. We have approximately 40 companies in our space cluster. And not all of these companies have to be directly space related. So some of the ideas of what these companies are doing are really out there. Some companies are from abroad and they came and set base here because we nudged them to set base here in Cyprus. And they're doing things just like you said, never mind the Starlinks, never mind the other ones like OneWeb, etc., etc., etc. There are certain Cypriot projects that are groundbreaking, that we're going to hear about them in the next few years, because we're working very closely with our ecosystem in order to be competitive and innovative. And I'm closing with this point. It was approximately 3 years ago that we had a webinar, kind of like now, okay? But that one was done between us, CSEO, and the European Space Agency and the Moon Village Association. So we had the Director General of the European Space Agency, lots of businesses from around the planet, from Asia, Europe, Africa, and the States and the Americas. And we explained how non-space companies can be relevant to this new space race.
Right.
So that was how we showed to the world that, no, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be able to do something in space. In fact, recently we hired a new high-ranking official in our company, Alex, her name. We absolutely love her. If she's listening to this, I hope she smiles. And
like, share, and subscribe. I've never done that before. Sorry, I interrupted.
That was a good one. So because she's British, when we applied for her to get a visa to be able to work in Cyprus, new era after Brexit, okay? So the various governmental departments were asking us, but she's a lawyer. How does a lawyer, what does a lawyer have to do with space? She's working in space law. If you're going to have satellites, if you're going to have spacecraft, if you're going to have things happening in space, you don't have certifications, contracts, licenses, all the things that need to be done in space. It's a major thing.
I agree to my health getting deteriorated, because if you go into space, I mean, it's a very real thing, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with Suni and Butch when they went up there and they were stuck with the Boeing mission.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes.
They were stuck for how many months? Or 9 months, I think it was.
Yes, and I heard Elon Musk, just to see how, because we've spoken about, we've touched this topic where, the human race, we do some stupid things sometimes, where they were out there in space, and it was before the Trump administration. Elon Musk gave a lending hand, said, I can bring you down. And they didn't want to. The pride. No. And he didn't. And it's because he wasn't allowed. And then I think Elon Musk brought them, right?
Elon Musk brought them back in the end, yeah.
After Trump became president. If he didn't, they would still be stuck up there. It's incredible. So, yeah, I mean, so many things to talk about here. There's questions that we can keep popping up as we're speaking.
Let me say for the conference, we have some of the most interesting players internationally to be coming here from the industry. We have Lockheed Martin, the big boys. We have JAXA as a sponsor. We have We're speaking to the European Space Agency, Thales Alenia, and British Aerospace Enterprises. So these big boys are like the ones who are like supporting the conference.
So it's interesting what you said before you were involved with Virgin Media.
Yeah.
And I think Richard Branson's also doing something with space. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. You've got to have billions to do this stuff. And then you've got Richard Branson. Have you reached out to him?
Regarding the space?
Oh, yes.
Well, it's a big story. Okay. I have been working closely with him. I was in his big companies, made money for him, etc. In the Virgin Galactic thing, didn't turn out as good as he was planning. He had some success stories, but he then created a second company, Virgin Orbit. Unfortunately, he had to fold that company without success. He had some failures, and Virgin Galactic, the stock is not doing so well.
What's the mission of Virgin Atlantic? Just commercialization?
Galactic,
Commercialization.
Virgin Galactic,
Okay. Virgin Galactic. Sorry, what did I say?
Atlantic. Virgin Atlantic is doing well. They're fine. Yes,
yeah. That's the airline. That's the airline, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so Virgin Galactic. Their mission, what commercialization of space exploration? Is that what the mission is?
Yeah, commercialization in the sense that what they're doing is, do you want to go for a suborbital trip? Do you want to be, quote, an astronaut for a short mission? You're not becoming an astronaut, okay? It's like the other day when Jeff Bezos sent his fiancée with lots of other...
Katy Perry and...
Yeah.
And they came back and it was this...
Yeah, so basically, like, women were up in arms, like, against that, because basically what he was selling there is a promotion to his company. They didn't become astronauts. There are such amazing female scientists that he could have sent up there, but he just did that for the promotion of his brand.
It's marketing.
Yeah, it's marketing.
Big audience is just getting his name up there, out there.
But if you don't go for a whole orbit around the planet, you don't become an astronaut. No, you're not an astronaut. And then you have to be above 100 meters. You have to do a full orbit.
100 meters? 100 kilometers.
Kilometers, I'm sorry. Yeah, slip of the tongue. Yeah. So 100 meters, okay, I can do it from here. I can go to...
Go to the Burj Al Arab.
Yeah, exactly.
The Burj Khalifa.
You become an astronaut. So you have to go in orbit
100 kilometers.
100 kilometers.
Which doesn't seem like a long distance.
No, it's not that long, but that's the limit. 100 kilometers is the limit to say that you're in space. Then, and remember, when you're flying in an airplane, 30,000 feet, that's 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some airplanes fly 15. Some of the special airplanes can fly higher, but then space is at 100 kilometers.
And is that where the stratosphere? Is that at the brink of the stratosphere?
Yes, that's the outer layers of our atmosphere. And that's when there's so minute amount of air.
It's not a lot of air.
Which you basically say, okay, this is the limit of what this space starts.
And there's no gravity.
There is gravity everywhere, okay? But the lack of gravity is if you get into orbit, you're on a constant fall. You're falling always down, but because you're always moving forward, you feel that you're in no gravity, but you're always falling down in gravity.
And because you got the momentum that's projecting you forward, you don't ever come down to the surface. And
Exactly.
You just keep going around and you
Exactly.
That's interesting.
That's what's an orbit, orbital mechanics.
Okay.
So, and that's why when you're closer to the Earth, you have to go faster to keep the momentum.
Yes.
And when you're further away, you go slower.
So I want to ask a quick, in the aerospace industry, so, planes.
Yeah.
Doesn't it make sense to just go higher? And then, you get to your destination quicker with less friction, less air, less...
Alex, our barrister,
yes,
our legal officer, she was working for a company whose whole project was to fly into space with a synergistic air breathing reaction engine. Okay, that's a mouthful. What does that mean? It's a rocket and a jet engine in one. So when it's flying in air, it's a jet engine, just like an aeroplane. When it gets high enough, it becomes a rocket. It flies over into space and then lands far away. So you could go, for example, between London and Sydney in, I don't know what it was, 3 hours, 3.5 hours. There was some figure that they gave. But unfortunately, the company didn't get to the destination.
So the problem is an airplane obviously needs air. Because when you go so high up, there's no air for it to...
You need to compress the capsule in order to keep it just like the airplane.
Right.
Okay, because if the window opens of an airplane, you can't breathe.
Yeah.
Imagine further up there what happens. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, all of this science is just way above my pay grade, but very interesting. Right. So we're exploring different, let's call it, opportunities that might arise. And we were talking about the Starlink example, right? And I mean, there are many different examples, and I was going to throw another one out there. I'm sure people have thought of this, it's what they say, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's actually executing and materializing the idea that is the challenge. And here's another idea. And perhaps one of the many problems there are, and when it comes to especially like quantum computing, when we talk about AI and what quantum computing is going to do to AI, and crypto mining or whatever it is, one big problem in the infrastructure sector, when it comes to PCs and servers and whatever, is a massive amount of heat that gets generated with processors. And so we're exploring, different. I've seen, these big tech companies exploring
quantum computing.
Quantum computing, and taking the CPUs, which generate so much heat, into
liquid,
deep oceans where it's super freezing. Well, I think going up maybe makes sense. And could we see a world where there are data centers floating in space with crypto mining and all this stuff happening, or quantum computing and AI?
You have an idea how many proposals we're getting on crypto in space? Yes, we're getting quite a few.
So as I said, and ideas, but you're getting proposals, right? And so how would your organization be involved in, let's say, an example like that? How does that look? So say I come with this idea, right? I think this is, I'm looking at the quantum computing side of things. I see big potential over there. Google's already made a massive leap, solved this massive equation that would take our current CPUs millions of years to solve, and the quantum processor did it in some minutes, something crazy like that. So something's going to happen there. Now, I want to be involved. I want to be one of the first people that's involved in quantum processing in space, because it's super freezing up there and there's no problem with generating the electricity that, the fans and all this liquid nitrogen and all of this stuff, just take it into space. How can you help me as an organization?
So we have a program. We call it the Space Startups Program. It's part of our innovation initiative. So what we do is we write to our members. Anyone can become a member for free. We don't believe in paid memberships. And how can somebody become a member? Simply go to space.cy. You then see the button that says join, and you join either as an individual or as a company. If you then join as a company, you become a member of the space cluster of CSEO, and then you start receiving a whole lot of support. Part of that support is the mentorship. So you come either through a call, and we have calls through the competitions of NASA, the competition that's coming now from COSPAR, and other competitions, European Union, CNES, French Space Agency, blah, 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 many competitions. Or you come with an unsolicited proposition. Unsolicited meaning because you did it outside a regular call. So we get these proposals, we evaluate them. Those are going to get an award, or let me rephrase, those that we believe are worthy of getting an award. We give them a lot of support. We push them. We refine them, and we help them get to the point of really being able to get that award. And as I said, 8 times in the past, that happened globally. If then it's not just a basic research idea, the spectrum of basic research, development, and then commercialization. If your idea falls into the development and commercialization, it's not just basic science, then we can support that idea to become a company. And then we can support it to be connected with the right people, the right mentorship, investment, etc., to get to the level of being a successful company. If a company is an established one and it's a member of the cluster, they can come to us again with a proposal, usually unsolicited, and we evaluate that, we support them, we connect them, and we again bring VC or other funding to their table. And as I said before, this ecosystem now is open. Anyone can join. It's free for anyone to join. And it's also free for those that want to come in and say, wait a minute, I see an ecosystem here. They are innovating. They're the startups with the ideas. They're the companies with the ideas. I'm the investor. I want to invest in them. How do I get involved? So one of the tiers we have in our cluster are the investors. So we bring them all together and we build and raise up our ecosystem and the international ecosystem, because this new competition of November is an international competition from Cyprus for the world.
Great. You mentioned before that you have thousands of examples of how space can be, can solve many different problems and be a business on its own. Could you give us some of these examples?
Yeah.
Because, up until now, we've been exploring only my ideas, but you are there.
So where are my sunglasses here? These are my glasses.
Yes.
And when I wear them and I'm out in the sun, the coating is going to start changing and it's going to become dark. Or you might go with your sunglasses, which have got a special coating and they're protecting your eyes from the sun, right? That special coating was designed for the suit of the astronaut, the helmet of the astronaut, so that when they go to the moon, the radiation doesn't go into and destroy their brain, etc.
Right.
So that's one example. But let me take you to a different example, a political example. Was it not during the Cold War that the Americans and the Soviets had somebody said, okay, and that somebody was from our organization, COSPAR, okay? Not the Cyprus one, the international one. And they said, why not see Soyuz docking with the Gemini? So they said, that's a good idea. Shall we do it? Would the politician accept that? They put it on the table. They thought that either the Americans or the Soviets would say, are you kidding me? We docked with them, but they did it. And they docked in space during the Cold War, when there was the danger of remember the missile crisis, okay? And imagine in space, when the two docked, you had an American hand and a Soviet hand, and they shook hands in space. And then the American president went to see the Soviet president, and they started the disarmament. So these are some of the benefits of space: technological, political, visionary, and other. Climate change, bringing solutions for the sustainability of the planet, protecting the planet from dangers from out there, asteroids and comets. The list is very, very, very long. I'll give you another example, medical example. The MRI is a space technology that we're using for our health. And so many other examples.
And then there's also, obviously, we cannot ignore that there are bad people and
always
could use space in a bad way.
Always.
And one that's coming to mind is, wars and, from satellite, bam, destroying things, which, I don't know, is there technology, are there guns that work from satellite, from space?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible.
which is super scary, right? I mean, I think about here, I think, and let's talk about Cyprus. I don't know if this is maybe a vulnerability. We're a channel over here. We talk things as they are. It's not as if I'm going to say something that's super confidential. We don't have an army. Even though I go to the army, the equipment that we have is not good. It's just the truth. And, while we're busy putting the Akondia, marking, our cannons, which are from the 1960s, to a line to throw one cannon every 5 minutes. There's satellites that are going to be targeting us within seconds and destroying us. Yes. As we're busy doing it, there's going to be some drone that comes the size of a Kia Sportage, and we won't know what's happening. So I think, when it comes to that, it's giving that kind of power and these advanced technologies to the wrong people is also something that's of concern. And I think, is that something that you're considering in your organization? How can you play your part to mitigate that?
Okay, let's see. Where do we start? For starters, we have the COPUOS, the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Space, which is part of the UN-USA, the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. I've been to their proceedings, their meetings multiple times. They're based in Vienna. It is the United Nations for space. And there are multiple treaties on what you can and can't do in space. But then again, not everything within the United Nations goes smoothly. We've seen issues with decisions, recent and past, even with Cyprus matters. It had become necessary to create an extra body, slightly less formal than the United Nations, but still equally competent and equally important. That's called the Global Experts Group. Sorry, I lost my tongue. The Global Experts Group for Sustainable Lunar Activities. That's the GEXLA. That was created and announced from the Moon Village Association Symposium that was held in Nicosia, Cyprus in 2021. We, CSEO, went with the Moon Village Association to the United Nations in Vienna and promoted the creation of such an organization. Slowly, we got a few countries from here, from there. We started to grow critical mass, and then we got to the point that everybody who matters, especially the US, Russia, China, Japan, Europe, are in there. And Cyprus, of course, is in there. Okay. And specifically, I'm the representative of the country to that, and also to the NASA Artemis Accords, hence wearing this thing here. So, why is this body important, the GEXLA? Because when you're at the United Nations, the communication isn't always flowing the best possible way. I've been multiple times, and I've been in a session where two of the big countries were arguing a point for the last 2-3 hours, and they were never getting unstuck from that one point with no progress out of that point. So through the GEXLA, we brought them together through meetings that are, let's say, bringing results in a more productive way, maybe because it's more friendly, maybe because we know what's the intention, and results happened. There were agreements as to how we utilize the moon for sustainable methods. So it was amazing. It's you had China, Russia, the US discussing things in good faith, agreeing on things. Yes, there were disagreements, but then in the end, there was an agreement. And then they took their principles to the United Nations, to the UN COPUOS, the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Space, to vote that. So what I won't forget, though, is we went with Mr. Skouridis to the NASA headquarters back in June, just before NASA came to Cyprus to sign the agreement with CSEO. And we met the third in command of NASA, and he said, Mr. Danos, it's an honor to meet you.
You know me?
What does that mean? So I beg your pardon, I said to him. He says, Gexla, International Moon Day, Mr. Mike Gold sends his warmest regards, because all these things you've done here are of tremendous benefit to space exploration and to NASA. And for that reason, we want to work with you. It's like, oh my God. I went home and it was one of those moments that is like my legs melted. And it's just, I wanted to be on the ground and just cry. Didn't believe that this happened. But these are the instruments. These are the people that the scientists, the diplomats, the space diplomats. I'm a space diplomat, not formal space diplomat, but yes, if I'm in Gexla, I am even formally a space diplomat. So all these people who are in this fora and trying our very best to be able to work with each other, to bring benefits to the planet, it's our responsibility to keep things sane. But sometimes it falls outside our hands because there are people higher up that see things differently and we can't control it when it's there. But sometimes we try to, even in those cases, through diplomacy, through scientific rationale, to let cool minds prevail.
Yeah.
So I'm an optimist. Yes, we're living through a very, very difficult era. Very difficult era. From climate change to the state of the planet, the geopolitics, the wars that are happening around us. Scary times. The AI and its advancements, which is basically like one of the most amazing things that ever happened to humanity. But then if it's not correctly regulated, it could be its demise. So there's so many things happening right now that are, oh my God, scary.
Yeah.
But somehow I'm optimistic.
That's great. George, we've been speaking, I think, for about an hour here already.
Oh, you're right.
Super interesting conversation. And there's just so much more, I think, that we could have explored on. But before we get into closing comments, is there maybe something that you want to kind of address or bring to the attention of the audience? Future plans of the organization, maybe something inspirational, you know.
Yeah.
I think what's useful in setups like this, a platform like this, small be it, but I mean, you know, as the audience grows, somebody somewhere might hear this that might have the capacity to do something great. There's maybe on some closing comments, if you can give some inspirational words here and what your future plans are.
I wasn't planning to say or do this, but I think you struck a sensitive note within me. We're doing what we're doing as an organization because we believe in our country, because we believe that what we do brings competence, stimulates our young people. But at the same time, we're not the International Space Innovation Center just for our country, but for the world. So the next steps we're going to take are looking to transform technologies for the benefit of humanity, for the benefit of Cyprus, for the benefit of Europe, for the benefit of the whole planet. So those young minds that know that they have brilliant ideas, come to us, give us a phone call, send us a form from the website. There's a contact form. Become a member, join our events, and see how you can contribute to what we're doing. If you're not a person who's got ideas and is an entrepreneur or an innovator, and you're on the other side, you're an investor and can support these people here, come and speak to us because amazing things are already happening. If you think that we had a whole pager in the Sunday Times, in Washington Post, in the annual edition of The Economist, like speaking so highly about our country and what we have been achieving, And if they selected us, all the big boys, to be here in November in Cyprus, then we must be doing something right. So come and support this effort. All together, we can do amazing things in this country. And last but not least, this November, when everybody is going to be here, we made sure we got permission from the international organization to have the smallest possible daily passes for students in order to come and be able to experience the scientific sessions. But the weekend after the symposium, 3 to 7 is the symposium, 8 and 9, all those sessions free of registration.
Great.
So we're doing that for our people to be able to be there for no fee whatsoever.
Awesome. So just to recap there, it's November 3rd to November 7th at the Royal Hall in Nicosia.
Yep. And the URL is simply COSPAR2025.org. And COSPAR is spelled with a COSPAR 2025.org.
COSPAR 2025.org.
That's it.
Get on there, register. You never know how you could change the world.
Indeed.
Thank you, George, for your time.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap.